Now let's begin. The morning Sophia turned 8, I transferred $400,000 into a trust fund with her name on it. My daughter sat at the kitchen table, frosting still on her lip from her birthday pancakes, completely unaware that her future had just been secured. The money came from the Kellerman case, 3 years of meticulous investigation that had brought down one of the largest Ponzi schemes in the Northeast. My share of the recovery fee had been substantial, and unlike most men who'd spent a decade as a financial crimes investigator, I'd learned that the real game wasn't in chasing money, but in protecting it. Charlotte had smiled at me that morning, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's a lot of money for a child," she'd said, her fingers drumming against her coffee cup. "Maybe we should think about investing it differently. My parents have some ideas." I'd ignored the comment then. I shouldn't have. My background made me naturally suspicious, an occupational hazard from my years with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I'd spent my 20s and 30s tracking money launderers, fraudsters, and con artists, people who could smile at you while emptying your bank account. When I'd left the agency to start my own consulting firm, I'd taken that paranoia with me. It had served me well. Armstrong Financial Consulting specialized in helping law firms and corporations untangle complex financial frauds. I was good at finding patterns, at seeing the story hidden in spreadsheets and wire transfers. What I'd failed to see was the pattern forming in my own home. Sophia looked up at me now, her dark eyes, my eyes, bright with innocence. "Daddy, can we go to the park after school?" "Absolutely, princess." I ruffled her hair, dark like mine, but with Charlotte's slight curl. "But first, let's get you ready. Uncle Justin is coming over for dinner tonight." Charlotte's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. She'd never liked my brother, claimed he was too intense, too aggressive. The irony wasn't lost on me. Justin Armstrong was one of the most respected litigation attorneys in the state, a partner at Brennan and Cross, and he'd built his reputation on being exactly that, intense and aggressive. Those qualities had won him cases against opponents who'd assumed his relatively young age meant he could be pushed around. They'd learned otherwise. "Does he have to?" Charlotte asked, her voice carrying that edge I'd heard more frequently over the past 6 months. "You know my family finds him intimidating." "That's because he asks questions they don't want to answer," I said mildly, watching her reaction. There it was, the slight flush, the way her jaw tightened. "Besides, he's Sophia's godfather. He has a right to visit his niece." Charlotte didn't respond, just gathered her purse and keys with sharp, angry movements. She worked part-time at her mother's interior design firm, a job that seemed to involve more lunch meetings than actual design work. "I'll be late tonight. We have a new client consultation." She was gone before I could reply, the door closing just a shade too hard. Sophia looked up at me with that perceptive gaze children sometimes have, the one that sees more than adults want them to. "Is mommy mad at you?" "Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, sweetheart. It's normal." I knelt down to her level, helping her into her backpack. "But you know what's not normal? How awesome you are. Did I mention you got an A on your math test?" Her smile returned, bright as sunrise, and for a moment, the tension in my chest eased. Whatever was happening with Charlotte, whatever storm was brewing, Sophia remained untouched by it. I make sure it stayed that way. That evening, Justin arrived with his usual punctuality, a bottle of wine in one hand and a wrapped present for Sophia in the other. At 34, he was 2 years younger than me, but carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a case he cared about winning. We shared the same dark hair, the same sharp jawline, though his eyes were a shade lighter than mine, more gray than blue. "Uncle Justin." Sophia launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, spinning her around. "There's my favorite niece," he said, setting her down and presenting the gift. "A little bird told me you've been wanting this." Sophia tore into the wrapping to reveal the latest book in her favorite series, and her squeal of delight made Justin grin. He was good with her, better than Charlotte gave him credit for. Maybe that was part of the problem. After Sophia went to bed, Justin and I sat in my study, the room I'd converted into a home office. Financial documents covered one wall on a corkboard, a habit from my investigative days. Justin glanced at them with professional interest before turning to me. "Charlotte's family is making moves," he said without preamble. That was Justin, straight to the point. "I heard through a colleague that Beverly Swanson has been asking around about trust fund dissolution. Specifically, about accessing funds set aside for minors." my hand still on my whiskey glass. When, last week, she consulted with Marvin Chun at First National. He's not bound by attorney-client privilege with her since she didn't retain him, so when he mentioned it at a bar function, word traveled. Justin's eyes were sharp. "Roland, what's going on?" I took a long drink, weighing my words. Justin was family, but he was also an attorney, bound by certain ethical obligations. What I told him could be used later, in ways I might need. Charlotte's been different lately. Distant. Her family has always been entitled, but recently the comments about Sophia's fund have increased. Little suggestions that we should share family resources or that I'm being selfish keeping it all for one child. You've noticed other things. It wasn't a question. I had. Late-night phone calls. Charlotte ended when I entered the room. Unexplained absences. Her phone, once carelessly left around the house, now always in her purse, password protected. The smell of cologne that wasn't mine lingering in our bedroom one afternoon when I'd come home early from a client meeting. But I wasn't ready to voice those suspicions yet, not even to Justin. Suspicion required evidence, and I was still gathering it. "Keep your eyes open," Justin said quietly. "And Roland, if they make a formal demand for that money, you call me immediately. Don't handle it alone." I nodded, but we both knew I'd do whatever I thought best. It was my nature. The investigator in me always played the long game, always waited for the full picture before acting. I should have told Justin everything that night. Would have saved us both some grief. But hindsight is perfect, and I was still operating on the assumption that my marriage could be saved, that Charlotte was still the woman I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago. 2 weeks later, the Swansons made their move. It was a Sunday, one of those crisp October afternoons when the leaves were just starting to turn. Charlotte had insisted we attend her family's weekly dinner at her parents' estate in Greenwich, a sprawling property that Beverly and Terrence Swanson had purchased during better economic times. The house was impressive, all white columns and manicured lawns, but the maintenance showed signs of strain. Paint peeling near the garage. Gardens not quite as pristine as they'd once been. The Swansons were what my mother would have called house poor, drowning in property taxes and upkeep on a lifestyle they could no longer quite afford. Terrence Swanson met us at the door, his handshake firm, but his smile not quite genuine. He was a large man, former college football player gone soft around the middle, with the kind of bluster that covered insecurity. He'd made his money in commercial real estate during the boom years, but the bust had hit him hard. He still talked like a successful businessman, but I'd seen his type before. Men clinging to past glory while their present crumbled. "Roland, good to see you." "Charlotte, honey, your mother's in the kitchen. Wade and Hannah are already here." Wade Swanson, Charlotte's older brother, stood near the bar mixing drinks with the practiced ease of someone who did it often. He was handsome in that effortless way some men are, with Charlotte's same blonde hair and easy smile. He worked for his father's company, though from what I'd gathered, that mostly meant he accompanied Terrence to golf games with potential investors. He'd been married once, briefly, but his ex-wife had left him 2 years ago under circumstances no one in the family liked to discuss. "Roland," Wade said, his smile wide as he handed me a bourbon. "Heard you closed the Mercer case. Nice work." "Thank you." I accepted the drink, noting the expensive label. Wade always poured top shelf, even though I knew the Swansons' finances were strained. Another tell, people desperate to maintain appearances. Hannah Swanson emerged from the kitchen, Charlotte's younger sister, carrying a tray of appetizers. Where Charlotte was poised and controlled, Hannah was animated, almost manic in her energy. She'd started 3 different businesses in the past 5 years, each one failing within months. Currently, she was pitching some kind of lifestyle brand on social media, though her follower count suggested it wasn't going well. "Roland, how's our favorite brother-in-law?" Hannah air-kissed near my cheek, trailing expensive perfume. "You look tired." "Charlotte, is he working too hard again?" "Always," Charlotte said, her tone light, but her eyes on me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Beverly Swanson made her entrance last, descending the staircase like she was starring in her own movie. She'd been beautiful once and knew it, the kind of woman who'd traded on her looks to marry up. Even now, in her early 60s, she maintained that beauty through expensive interventions and designer clothes. She ran Swanson Interiors, the design firm where Charlotte worked, and treated it less like a business and more like a social club. "Darling," she said, embracing Charlotte warmly before turning to me with a cooler smile. Roland, so glad you could make it. And where's our sweet Sophia? Playroom upstairs, Charlotte said. I set her up with her tablet. Dinner was the usual affair. Expensive food, expensive wine, conversation that skated over the surface of real topics. The Swansons were experts at appearing successful, at hosting events that suggested wealth and stability. But I'd learned to read the signs. The wine, while good, was from last year's vintage, suggesting they'd bought in bulk when prices were lower. The china was chipped if you looked closely. The conversation stayed carefully away from any discussion of actual finances. It was over dessert that Beverly struck. Roland, dear, Charlotte mentioned that Sophia has quite a substantial trust fund. For $100,000, is that right? The table went quiet. This was rehearsed, I realized. They'd planned this. That's correct, I said evenly, setting down my fork. It's for her education and future. Of course. Beverly's smile was practiced. But darling, she's only 8 years old. That money is just sitting there, not doing anything useful. And we've been thinking, Terrence and I are planning to purchase a new property, a beautiful estate in Bedford. We could really use some liquidity for the down payment. You want to borrow from Sophia's fund? I said, not a question. Well, not borrow exactly. Terrence leaned forward, his salesman persona fully engaged. More like redistribute family assets. Think of it as an investment opportunity. Once we purchase the Bedford property, we can rent out this house, generate income. Everyone benefits. Sophia is 8, I repeated. The money is legally hers, held in trust. Legally, perhaps. Wade's voice carried an edge. But morally? Roland, we're family. Family helps each other. That money came from a case you worked on. Really, it's community property from the marriage, isn't it? Charlotte should have a say in how it's used. I looked at my wife. Charlotte met my gaze steadily, her expression unreadable. They have a point, Roland. It is a lot of money to keep locked away for years. And my family has always been there for us. Maybe it's time we return the favor. By stealing from our daughter. The words came out cold, harder than I'd intended. That's a strong word, Beverly said, her smile tightening. We're not talking about stealing. We're talking about family cooperation. Sophia doesn't need $400,000. She's a child. But we need this money now for a real investment opportunity. Surely you can see the logic in that. Hannah nodded enthusiastically. Plus, think about it. When we're all more financially secure, Sophia benefits too. A rising tide lifts all boats, right? I sat back, letting my gaze travel around the table. Wade, leaning forward with barely concealed eagerness. Hannah, already mentally spending the money. Beverly and Terrence, wearing matching expressions of entitled expectation. And Charlotte, my wife, the mother of my child, watching me with something cold in her eyes. They thought they had me cornered. They thought because I loved Charlotte, because I valued family harmony, I would cave. They'd miscalculated badly. I need to think about it, I said finally. Beverly's smile widened. Of course, dear. Take your time. But not too much time. The Bedford property won't stay on the market forever. I'll give you my answer in 2 weeks. As we drove home that night, Sophia asleep in the back seat, Charlotte broke the silence. You're going to say no, aren't you? That money is Sophia's. And my family needs it more. Her voice was sharp, angry in a way I'd rarely heard. You don't understand, Roland. You grew up middle class, comfortable. You don't know what it's like to watch everything slip away, to lose your status, your place in society. Your parents aren't losing their place in society, I said quietly. They're losing a house they can't afford to maintain. There's a difference. You're so judgmental. So superior. Charlotte turned away, staring out the window. Maybe Wade is right. Maybe you are too selfish to see what really matters. Wade. Not her father. Not her mother. Wade. That's when I knew. Not suspected. Not wondered. Knew. The pieces fell into place with a sickening click. The cologne in our bedroom. The late nights. The way Wade looked at Charlotte when he thought no one was watching. I drove the rest of the way home in silence, my mind already working through possibilities, through evidence I'd need, through the shape of what would have to be done. Because if Charlotte and her family thought they could take my daughter's future to fund their failing lifestyle, they didn't know who they were dealing with. I'd spent 10 years investigating financial crimes. I knew exactly how to build a case, how to lay a trap, how to make people condemn themselves with their own greed. and I had just decided to do exactly that. The next morning, I called Justin from my office, my door locked and my voice low. He answered on the second ring, always alert. They made their move, I said without preamble. They want the 400,000. All of it. Christ. A pause, the sound of papers rustling. What did you tell them? That I'd think about it. Justin, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it quietly. I'm listening. I need you to help me set a trap. Over the next 2 weeks, Justin and I met in secret. Coffee shops far from our usual haunts, his office after hours, once even in a parking garage like characters in a thriller. It would have been funny if it weren't so deadly serious. I laid out everything I'd observed about Charlotte and Wade, about the Swansons' financial desperation, about their assumption that I would simply hand over Sophia's money. Justin listened with his lawyer's attention to detail, taking notes, asking sharp questions. You're sure about Charlotte and Wade? Not yet, but I will be. I pulled out a folder I'd been compiling. Phone records showing calls between Charlotte and Wade at odd hours. Credit card statements showing charges at the same restaurants on the same days, different cards. I've installed security cameras in the house. Just waiting for confirmation. Roland. Justin looked troubled. What you're planning, it's going to destroy your marriage. My marriage is already destroyed. I'm just documenting it. He couldn't argue with that. Instead, he pulled out his own notes. Okay, here's what we can do. The trust fund is ironclad. I made sure of that when I helped you set it up. It's explicitly for Sophia's benefit, and you're the trustee. But if you voluntarily agree to dissolve it or transfer the funds, that changes things. What if I don't voluntarily agree? What if they try to force me? Justin's smile was sharp. Then they're attempting to commit several crimes. Extortion, potentially fraud, theft from a minor. The key is documenting their intent, their pressure tactics, their own words condemning them. I'm already recording our conversations when the topic comes up. Good. Keep doing that. And Roland. He met my eye seriously. Once we spring this trap, there's no going back. You need to be absolutely sure. I thought of Sophia, of her trust in me, of the future I'd promised to protect. I'm sure. That evening, I got the confirmation I'd been dreading. The security camera I'd hidden in our bedroom, positioned to look like a phone charger, captured everything I needed. Charlotte and Wade, in my bed, in my home, while Sophia was at school and I was supposedly at a client meeting I'd mentioned that morning. I watched the footage once, my hands steady, my breathing controlled. Then I saved it, encrypted it, backed it up in 3 separate locations. Evidence. Just like I'd been trained. When Charlotte came home that evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner, acting like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek absently, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, just a cold calculation about how to use this information most effectively. Have you thought about what my parents asked? She said, pouring herself wine. I have. And I looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful, polished, every hair in place. And she was a stranger. I'm going to give them the money. Her eyes widened. Really? Really? All of it? Tell your parents they can have the full 400,000. Charlotte's smile was radiant, genuine in a way I hadn't seen in months. She threw her arms around me. Oh, Roland, thank you. You won't regret this. My family will be so grateful. I'm sure they will, I said, returning her embrace mechanically. Tell them I'll have my lawyer brother draw up the paperwork. We'll do this properly, legally. She pulled back slightly. Justin? Does he have to be involved? He's the one who helped set up the trust. He needs to be involved to dissolve it properly. I kept my voice calm, reasonable. Unless you don't want this to be legal? No, of course. Charlotte's smile returned, though something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe, or suspicion. But her greed won out. That's perfect. When can we do the transfer? I'll talk to Justin. We'll set something up for next month. These things take time to arrange properly. That night, Charlotte made love to me with an enthusiasm she hadn't shown in a year. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd rolled over, given in, proven myself the weak, controllable man she and her family believed me to be. She had no idea what was coming. The next day, I called a family meeting at the Swanson estate. Everyone attended, Beverly and Terrence, Wade and Hannah, Charlotte, even Justin, who arrived with his briefcase and his professional poker face. Sophia stayed home with a babysitter. She didn't need to witness this. We gathered in Terrence's study, a room heavy with dark wood and the smell of cigars. Beverly had set out coffee and pastries, playing the gracious hostess. They were all smiling, confident, already counting the money in their heads. "Thank you all for coming," I began, standing at the head of the table. "I've made my decision about Sophia's trust fund." And Beverly leaned forward eagerly. "I'm going to transfer the full amount to you. $400,000, just as you requested." The room erupted in celebration. Hannah actually clapped. Wade grinned and shook my hand, his grip just a little too tight, a little too triumphant. Charlotte beamed at me from across the room, and I saw it clearly now. The calculation, the relief of a woman who'd gotten what she wanted. However, I continued, and the room quieted. "There are conditions." "Conditions?" Terrence frowned. "What kind of conditions?" Justin stepped forward, pulling documents from his briefcase. "The transfer will be structured as a documented transaction. Everything will be in writing, the request for the funds, the intended use, acknowledgement of the source. Standard legal protection for all parties involved." "Why do we need all that?" Wade asked, his smile fading. "Because I'm transferring $400,000 to you," I said calmly. "I want everything documented. For tax purposes, for legal purposes. Surely you understand." Beverly waved a hand dismissively. Of course. Whatever paperwork you need, dear. We just want to make sure this gets done." "Excellent." Justin laid out the documents. "Then if everyone will review and sign here, we can proceed with scheduling the transfer." I watched them sign, one by one, their greed making them careless. They barely read the documents, too eager to secure the money. Charlotte signed last, her signature a flourish of confidence. They had no idea what they'd just put their names to, but they would, soon. That evening, alone in my study with Justin, I allowed myself a cold smile. How long until they realize? Not until the final transfer meeting. Justin's expression was grim but satisfied. And by then, it'll be too late. "Roland, are you absolutely certain about this? Once we execute this plan, there's no mercy, no going back." I thought about Sophia, about the college fund they'd tried to steal, about Charlotte in bed with her brother, about the casual cruelty of people who thought themselves entitled to everything. "I'm certain," I said. "Let them have exactly what they deserve." The trap was set. Now we just had to spring it. Over the next 3 weeks, I played the role of the defeated husband perfectly. I was quiet at family dinners, agreeable when Charlotte made plans, distant enough to seem broken, but not so much that I appeared suspicious. The Swansons treated me with barely concealed contempt now that they'd gotten what they wanted. Their smiles were patronizing, their comments dismissive. I was the fool who'd given in, the weak man who couldn't stand up to his wife and her family. Wade was the worst. He'd grown bolder, showing up at my house during the day when he thought I'd be at work. I knew because my security cameras caught everything. Him and Charlotte, laughing in my kitchen, kissing against my counter, disappearing upstairs. Each instance was documented, time-stamped, encrypted, stored safely away. "You're taking this remarkably well," Justin observed during one of our secret meetings. We were in his office. After hours, the city spread out beneath us in a glitter of lights. Most men would have confronted them by now. Most men aren't building a case. I reviewed the documents spread across his desk, bank records, signed agreements, transcripts of recorded conversations. Confrontation gives them a chance to regroup, to spin the narrative. I want them condemned by their own actions. Justin nodded slowly. "The transfer meeting is set for Friday. Byron, you will be there as their accountant." Apparently Terrence insisted on having someone review the paperwork before finalizing. That might complicate things. "Good," I said, and meant it. Let them have their accountant. The more witnesses to their downfall, the better. "You're a cold son of a bitch when you want to be," Justin said. But there was admiration in his voice. I learned from the best criminals I investigated. They taught me that the smartest traps are the ones people walk into willingly, convinced they're winning right up until the moment they realize they've destroyed themselves. Friday arrived with surprising quickness. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Justin's law firm, in one of their large conference rooms. Neutral territory, professional setting. I arrived early with Justin, and we set up the documents in neat folders at each seat. Everything was organized, official, ready. The Swansons arrived together, a unified front of expensive clothes and entitled smiles. Beverly wore her best jewelry. Terrence was in his power suit. Wade and Hannah flanked them like soldiers. Charlotte came in last, and when she saw me, her smile was warm, victorious. "Roland," she said, kissing my cheek. "Thank you for doing this. It means everything to my family." "I know it does," I said quietly. Byron Yu arrived 5 minutes later, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s with a reputation for being thorough. He nodded to the Swansons, shook hands with Justin professionally, then took his seat and immediately began reviewing the documents in front of him. "Shall we begin?" Justin's voice was professionally neutral, giving nothing away. For the next 20 minutes, he walked through the paperwork with meticulous care. The Swansons signed where indicated, their eagerness making them hasty. Wade kept glancing at his watch. Hannah was texting under the table. Beverly and Terrence exchanged satisfied smiles. Then came the final document, the transfer authorization. Byron Yu was reading it carefully now, his expression growing more focused. He flipped to a second page, then a third. His finger traced a line of text, stopped, went back, traced it again. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "I need a moment to review this specific clause." "Is there a problem?" Terrence asked, impatience creeping into his tone. Byron didn't answer. He was reading intently now, his face going from confused to concerned to pale. He looked up at Justin, then at me, then back at the document. "Mr. Swanson," he said slowly, "I need to speak with you privately." "We're in the middle of a transfer," Beverly protested. "Can it wait?" "No." Byron's voice was firm. "It cannot wait. Mr. Swanson, Mrs. Swanson, I need to speak with all of you. Now. Outside." The Swansons exchanged confused glances, but followed Byron out of the conference room. Charlotte looked at me questioningly, but I just smiled blandly. "Take your time." The door closed behind them. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Byron talking urgently, gesturing at the documents. I watched the Swansons' expressions change, confusion to concern to dawning horror. "Now," Justin murmured beside me, and I nodded. The door burst open. Terrence Swanson's face was red, veins standing out on his forehead. "What the hell is this?" "I'm sorry." I kept my voice calm, curious. "This isn't a gift. This isn't a transfer." He slammed the document on the table. "According to Byron, this is a documented record of attempted extortion of a minor's trust fund." Justin finished smoothly. "Yes, that's exactly what it is." The room went silent. Charlotte was staring at me, her face white. Wade had gone very still. Hannah looked like she might be sick. "You see," I continued, standing slowly, "I did agree to give you the money, just as you demanded. But I never agreed to do it illegally or to let you get away with it. Every conversation where you pressured me for Sophia's fund was recorded. Every document you just signed acknowledges that you knew this money belonged to my minor daughter, that you demanded it anyway, that you intended to use it for your own benefit. You've signed confessions to attempted theft from a minor, conspiracy to commit fraud, and extortion." "You can't," Beverly started. "I can," Justin interrupted. "And it's worse than that. The transfer you just authorized? It includes a clause that by accepting these funds, you're acknowledging that you obtained them through coercion and undue pressure on a family member. The $400,000 you were so eager to take? It's now legally classified as evidence of your crime." Byron Yu was shaking his head. "I advised them not to sign. But you should know, Mr. Armstrong, that by attempting to transfer the money at all, I never transferred anything," I said. "The account shows a pending authorization, but no actual transfer occurred. The funds remain in Sophia's trust, untouched. This entire exercise was simply to document their criminal intent and their willingness to follow through." Wade lunged forward, but Justin moved between us smoothly. "I wouldn't, Mr. Swanson. Assault in a law office with multiple witnesses and cameras would just add to your legal problems." "Charlotte," I said, turning to my wife. She was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "I should also mention that I have approximately 6 months of documentation regarding your affair with your brother." "Wait. Video evidence, actually. High definition. Time-stamped. Showing both of you in my home, in my bed, while our daughter was at school." The color drained from Charlotte's face completely. Wade made a strangled sound. That's not." Charlotte couldn't seem to form words. "It's evidence for the divorce proceedings I'll be filing on Monday," I continued calmly, "along with evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud and parental alienation. I'm seeking full custody of Sophia and a protection order preventing any of you from contacting her." You bastard, Terrence growled. You planned this. All of it. I documented your crimes. I corrected. You planned them. I just gave you enough rope to hang yourselves. Speaking of which, I nodded to Justin, who pulled out another folder. The IRS has been notified of the Swanson family's attempt to improperly access trust funds. They'll be very interested in reviewing your tax returns for the past 7 years, particularly regarding Beverly's interior design business and the way you've been reporting income and expenses. I believe the technical term is structured transactions designed to evade reporting requirements. Beverly gasped. You looked into my business? I'm a financial crimes investigator, I said. It's what I do. And your books are a disaster, Beverly. Shell companies, unreported income, falsified expenses. I found it all. Hannah was crying now, mascara running down her face. This isn't fair. We're family. You tried to steal from my 8-year-old daughter, I said, and for the first time, let my anger show. You conspired to take her future, her security, her education fund, so you could buy a house you don't need and can't afford. You thought I was weak. You thought I would just hand it over to keep the peace. You miscalculated. What do you want? Terrence asked, his voice defeated. Money? We'll pay you back, Wheel. I don't want your money. I want you to face the consequences of your actions. I gathered my papers, preparing to leave. The district attorney's office has been provided with copies of all documentation. They'll be in touch. Justin will be representing me in the divorce and custody proceedings. Any communication should go through him. Roland, please. Charlotte's voice was desperate now. Please, we can fix this. I made a mistake. We all did, but we can fix this. Think about Sophia. She needs her mother. Sophia needs a mother who doesn't conspire with her own family to steal from her. She needs a mother who doesn't commit adultery with her own brother. She needs a mother who puts her daughter's welfare first. I picked up my briefcase. Unfortunately, she doesn't have that mother. But she has a father who will protect her from all of you. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Charlotte? The house is in my name, purchased before we married. I want you out by Sunday. You can take your clothes and personal items. Everything else stays. You can't throw me out of my own home. It's not your home. It never was. I looked at each of them in turn, Beverly and Terrence, Wade and Hannah, and finally Charlotte. You wanted the money so badly. You were willing to destroy a child's future for it. I hope it was worth it. I left them there, frozen in their horror and disbelief. Justin followed me out, and we didn't speak until we reached his car in the parking garage. That was brutal, he said finally. They tried to steal from my daughter. I know. But Roland, are you okay? Was I okay? My marriage was over. My wife had been sleeping with her own brother. My daughter would grow up knowing her mother's family tried to rob her. But Sophia's fund was safe. Her future was secure. And the people who tried to destroy that were going to pay for their crimes. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. I'm free. The next 3 months were a blur of legal proceedings. The criminal case against the Swansons moved forward with frightening speed. When you have signed confessions and video evidence, there's not much room for defense. Terrence and Beverly faced charges of conspiracy to commit theft and attempted fraud. Wade got hit with both those charges plus adultery, still technically illegal in Connecticut, though rarely prosecuted, and breaking and entering for his unauthorized visits to my house. Charlotte fought the divorce viciously at first, trying to claim I'd entrapped her family, that I'd manipulated the situation. But Justin was merciless. He presented the evidence of her affair, the recorded conversations where she'd encouraged her family to pressure me, her own signatures on documents acknowledging what they were doing. The custody hearing was harder. Despite everything, Charlotte was Sophia's mother, and family court judges were often reluctant to completely sever that bond. But when the judge reviewed the evidence, the conspiracy to steal from Sophia, the affair with Wade, Charlotte's own recorded words saying Sophia doesn't need $400,000, the decision became clearer. I got full legal and physical custody. Charlotte was granted supervised visitation twice a month, pending completion of a psychological evaluation and parenting classes. She sobbed in the courtroom, and part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. But then I remembered her smile when she thought she'd won, her laughter with Wade in my kitchen, and the sympathy evaporated. The Swansons' financial house of cards collapsed completely. The IRS investigation uncovered years of tax fraud and unreported income from Beverly's business. The Bedford property they'd wanted so badly went to another buyer. Their Greenwich estate had to be sold to pay legal fees and back taxes. Terrence's commercial real estate business folded when his investors learned about the criminal charges. Hannah's social media presence imploded spectacularly when someone, definitely not me, though I had my suspicions about Justin, leaked the story to a blogger who specialized in exposing influencer fraud. Her follower count dropped to almost nothing within days. Wade lost his real estate license when the criminal conviction came through. Last I heard, he was working as a car salesman in New Jersey, living in a studio apartment, trying to rebuild some semblance of a life. But the real justice came 6 months after that conference room meeting. I was at Sophia's soccer game, watching her run across the field with the pure joy only children have, when I saw them, Beverly and Terrence Swanson, getting out of an old Toyota in the parking lot. They looked older, smaller, diminished in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. Beverly saw me and froze. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the parking lot. Then she turned away, and they drove off without watching the game. They'd come to see their granddaughter, but didn't have the courage to actually approach. Good. Sophia didn't need people in her life who saw her as a resource to exploit. That evening, I sat down with Sophia in her room, surrounded by her books and stuffed animals. She was 9 now, a year older and wiser than when this had all started. She knew her mother and I were divorced, knew that something bad had happened with her mom's family, but I'd shielded her from the worst of it. "Daddy," she said, looking up from her homework, "is my college money still safe?" "Yes, princess. It's safe. It's actually bigger now. The court ordered your mother's family to pay damages, which all went into your fund. You've got about $470,000 now." Her eyes widened. "That's a lot of money." "It is. And it's all yours, for when you're ready for college or to start your own life. No one can touch it but you." She considered this seriously, then asked the question I'd been dreading. Did Mom try to take my money? I could have lied, could have softened it. But I'd always promised to be honest with Sophia, and I wasn't going to start lying now. "Yes," I said quietly. "She did. And her family did too. They thought they needed it more than you did." "That's mean." "Yes, it was." "Is that why you don't live together anymore?" "That's part of it. Your mom made some choices that hurt our family. But Sophia, I need you to understand something." I knelt down so I was at her eye level. "None of this was your fault. Not the divorce, not what happened with your fund, none of it. And your mother does love you, in her own way. She made mistakes. Bad ones." Sophia wrapped her arms around my neck, and I held her tight. This precious person who'd been the target of such casual cruelty from people who should have protected her. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, Princess. Always." Later, after Sophia was asleep, I sat in my study with a glass of whiskey, looking at the photo wall I'd created. Pictures of Sophia through the years, laughing, playing, growing. This was what I'd protected. This was what made all of it worthwhile. Justin called around 9. "You see the news about Wade?" "What now?" "His ex-wife filed a lawsuit. Apparently, she'd suspected he was having an inappropriate relationship with Charlotte even during their marriage. She's suing for fraud, claiming he had assets in the divorce. Assets that are now documented thanks to our case." I couldn't help but laugh. The gift that keeps on giving. "Roland, I have to ask, do you ever regret how hard you came down on them? I mean, they're destroyed. Completely." I thought about it honestly. Did I regret it? The Swansons had lost everything. Their money, their reputation, their freedom in some cases. Charlotte was a shell of her former self, working a retail job and living in a one-bedroom apartment. Wade was persona non grata in Connecticut society. Beverly and Terrence would spend the rest of their lives trying to pay off legal debts and back taxes. "No," I said finally. "They tried to rob a child. My child. They thought they were entitled to her future, and they were willing to destroy it to get what they wanted. Actions have consequences. They earned every bit of what happened to them." "Fair enough," Justin said. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Sophia's lucky to have you as a father." After we hung up, I checked on Sophia one more time, finding her asleep with a book still in her hand. I carefully removed it, tucked her blanket around her, and kissed her forehead. She stirred slightly. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Princess." As I closed her door, I thought about the path that had led here. The investigation, the trap, the complete destruction of my marriage and my former in-laws. It had been brutal, ruthless, The kind of calculated revenge that most people only fantasized about. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. It was about showing my daughter that some things are worth fighting for, that evil doesn't always win, that the people who try to take advantage of others will eventually face justice. Sophia's trust fund sat safely in the bank, growing with compound interest, waiting for the day she'd need it. And when that day came, she'd have every dollar I'd promised her, plus more. The Swansons had wanted the money so badly they'd been willing to destroy family relationships to get it. They'd thought I was weak, that I'd cave under pressure, that they could manipulate me into giving them what they wanted. They'd been wrong. And in the quiet of my home, with my daughter safe in her bed and her future secure, I allowed myself a small, cold smile. The trap had worked perfectly. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.